Imagine a world at peace, nations trading, empires powerful, and technology advancing. Then, within weeks, everything collapses into chaos. A single bullet, fired in a quiet European city, would ignite the deadliest war humanity had ever seen. A war that would kill millions, destroy empires, and reshape the entire world. This is the story of World War I, the war that changed everything. Chapter 1. The world before the storm. At the dawn of the 20th century, Europe was at its peak. The British Empire ruled the seas. France had colonies across Africa and Asia, and the German Empire, young and ambitious, was rising fast. But behind the elegance of kings and empires, there was tension, a quiet arms race, secret alliances, and the pride of nations ready to explode. The continent was divided into two major alliances: the Triple Entente, France, Russia, and Britain; the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Each promised to protect the others if war broke out. It was like a web of dominoes. One wrong move, and everyone would fall. Meanwhile, nationalism was boiling. Small nations under imperial rule like Serbia dreamed of independence, and military generals believed that war was inevitable, maybe even glorious. Europe was a ticking time bomb. Chapter 2. The Spark. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. On June 28, 1914, in the city of Sarajevo, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, was assassinated by Gavrilo Princip, a 19-year-old Serbian nationalist. That bullet set the world on fire. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia and with support from Germany, declared war. Serbia turned to Russia for protection. Germany then declared war on Russia and on France shortly after. When German troops invaded neutral Belgium, Britain entered the war. Within days, Europe was burning. What started as a regional conflict became a world war. Chapter 3. The war begins. The Schlieffen Plan, Germany's plan, was simple: defeat France quickly, then turn east to fight Russia. They launched the Schlieffen Plan, sending massive armies through Belgium toward Paris. But the Belgians resisted fiercely, slowing the German advance. France and Britain rallied their forces, and by September 19, the Germans were stopped at the Battle of the Marne. The war of movement was over, and a new kind of horror began: trench warfare. Chapter 4. Life in the trenches. The Western Front stretched from the North Sea to Switzerland, over 700 kilometers of mud, blood, and misery. Soldiers dug deep trenches, facing each other across a barren no-man's land. Between them lay barbed wire, machine guns, and death. The conditions were unimaginable: rats, lice, freezing rain, and constant shelling. Men lived with the stench of corpses and the fear of gas attacks. This wasn't the glorious war people had imagined. It was hell on earth. The world saw new weapons: machine guns that could cut down hundreds in minutes, poison gas that burned lungs, tanks that rolled over trenches, airplanes that turned the skies into battlefields. Millions died for just a few meters of land. The war spreads across the world. Though centered in Europe, the war reached every corner of the globe. Colonial troops from Africa, India, and Asia fought for their empires. Battles erupted in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. In 1915, the Ottoman Empire joined Germany and Austria-Hungary, creating the Central Powers. Britain and France, with Russia, formed the Allied Powers. One of the most tragic campaigns was Gallipoli, where thousands of soldiers from Australia and New Zealand, the ANZACs, died in a failed attempt to capture the Ottoman capital. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, Germany crushed the Russian armies in massive battles like Russia's losses were devastating, and its people began to turn against their own government. The world turns against itself by 1916. Both sides were locked in a deadly stalemate. Two of the bloodiest battles in history took place that year. The Battle of Verdun, where France vowed they shall not pass. Over 700,000 casualties. The Battle of the Somme, where Britain lost 60,000 men on the first day alone. Entire towns lost a generation. Families waited for letters that would never come. As soldiers died on the front lines, civilians suffered at home. Food shortages, blockades, and grief. The war was consuming everything. Chapter 7. The Fall of Empires in 1917. Everything changed. In Russia, years of defeat and hunger led to revolution. The Tsar was overthrown, and later, Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks seized power, promising peace. Russia withdrew from the war, signing the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany. At the same time, across the Atlantic, the United States entered the war. Germany had resumed unrestricted submarine warfare, sinking civilian ships, including the Lusitania, killing Americans. In April 1917, President Woodrow Wilson declared war on Germany, saying, "The world must be made safe for democracy." The arrival of fresh American troops and supplies would soon tip the balance. Chapter 8. The Endgame. Germany. Essai las Combles. By 1918, Germany was desperate. They launched one final massive attack, the Spring Offensive, hoping to win before American forces arrived in full strength. At first, they advanced quickly, but the Allies held firm. Then, the counterattack began, known as the 100 Days Offensive. Germany's army, exhausted and starving, began to collapse. On November 11, 1918, at 11 a.m., the guns finally fell silent. The armistice was signed. After 4 years, the Great War was over. But the cost was beyond imagination. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. The war that changed the world. Over 16 million people were dead. Empires had fallen. The German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian empires vanished. In 1919, world leaders gathered in France to sign the Treaty of Versailles. Germany was blamed for the war and forced to pay massive reparations. Its economy collapsed, its people humiliated. The map of Europe was redrawn. New countries like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia were born. But the peace was fragile. The treaty planted seeds of anger and revenge, and just 2 decades later, they would bloom again in World War II. Chapter 10. The Legacy of World War I. World War I wasn't just about battles. It changed humanity itself. It ended the age of empires. It gave birth to modern warfare, propaganda, and psychological trauma, shell shock. It brought new technologies, airplanes, tanks, and chemical weapons. And it showed the world that war was not heroic, but devastating. The generation that survived never forgot. Writers, poets, and artists captured their pain, from Wilfred Owen's Haunting Verses to Eric Maria, Remarque et al., Quiet on the Western Front. And every year, on November 11th, the world pauses for a moment of silence to remember the millions who fought and fell. World War I began with a single gunshot, but its echoes still shape our world today. Borders, politics, technology, all carry its shadow. The Great War was meant to be the war to end all wars. But history, as we know, had other plans. If you learned something today, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, because remembering history is the only way to stop it from repeating.